Good evening. I'm Donna Lyons, Director of School Counseling at the high school, and welcome parents to the Longmeadow High School Junior Parent Night. With me tonight, I have Emily Gibbings from Westfield State University. She's the Associate Director of Admissions. If you can just give a wave when I introduce you. Tara Lindros, Associate Dean of Admission from Wesleyan University. Michael Rossi, Admission Coordinator, Springfield Technical Community College. And Christopher Wistapek, Executive Director for Admissions for Outreach and Recruitment and Athletic Liaison at Western New England University. Ooh, that's a mouthful. So before we begin with the panel, I wanted to let parents know and students who are viewing tonight that we did begin our individual junior meetings today. So we are meeting with juniors over the next several weeks in individual meetings. We are going over the junior booklet, which I mentioned in the invite to this program tonight. That is found on the Longmeadow High School website under the counseling drop-down menu, college planning, and junior booklet. That booklet has a wealth of information regarding the college search and planning process. So we hope that parents and students will find their way to that booklet. Tonight's program, basically the focus of the evening is on the college search, selection, and application process, what students should know and be prepared for in terms of the application process and beginning the application process next fall. The format will be specific questions will be asked of our panelists. In some cases, one person may answer the question. If it pertains to everyone, we may hear a different perspective from the different panelists tonight. I guess we'll just get started with the questions. This is regarding the beginning of the application process, or actually the search process. When students just begin the process of researching colleges, what advice would you provide to help students identify colleges that might be of interest to them? And I would say if everyone can answer this, maybe start with Chris, and then I'll just call on the next person and go from there.
Thank you, Donna. So with the beginnings of the search, there's a lot of things I recommend to students to have. And I know this year is going to be a little bit different than my response from last year. So just because with the pandemic and a lot of schools, how they're operating is a little bit different. But just coming here tonight is a great start of your search process. So this way you can start developing some questions of what you're looking for, the size of the school, where you want to be. And really, I always tell students, you want to create that list. All right. You want to create that list of saying they must have this. Middle say, you know what, if they have this type of, like, let's say they have this type of sport, but it's not going to make or break it. Or if they have X, Y, Z, then I'm not going there because that's not what I'm looking for. So you want to create that list and really start doing your research. Now, normally I would say, a lot of times we visit your school, attend college fairs. We don't know when that will be taking place, but there are going to be a lot of virtual events like this as well. There's many of these schools that are going to be having these meetings where you really want to make sure you try to connect with that admissions counselor, because communication is probably going to be more important than ever before. Because we're going through the virtual just as much as the students are doing as well. We're all trying to adapt to it. So you really want to make sure you spend that time. You research the schools on the website. If you have the opportunity to visit, I highly recommend it. There are some institutions out there that are giving tours. There are some that are not. But even if you're still like trying to figure out, well, I don't know what type of school I want. I don't know where I want to go. We'll start locally, because I know a lot of the local schools in this area, including Western New England. I think Westfield is doing some tours. I believe Springfield is. So you really want to make sure start local then. Visit some of the big ones, large ones. If they can do driving tours, do those. That's the only way you're truly going to know exactly what you're going to be looking for, and then also developing those questions in the end. I know this is a topic I can go on and on, but I'll let my colleagues answer some additional ones.
Mike, do you want to add anything to that from a 2-year perspective?
Sure. I would say whether it's a public or private or a 2-year or 4-year, every college has a different culture. Some of the things that were already mentioned, the size, whether it's a rural college or an urban college. Of course, you want to go to an institution that has the program that you're looking for, because not every college offers every academic program. And when hopefully things get a little bit better and you do have more availability to actually go to colleges, because a lot of us unfortunately are operating remotely right now, once things kind of begin to open up again, I would definitely recommend, as Chris already mentioned, visit the campus, because every campus has its own personality, its own feel, and it's really about fit and where you as an individual kind of best fit in as an institution.
I guess I would just, I'm sorry, Emily, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tara.
I would also add, there are, if you really have no idea, I definitely think if you can, even just physically see a campus, and you're very lucky to live in a place where there are lots of college campuses really close to home that are, at least minimally safe to drive your car, around and just kind of see if you haven't been able to spend time on a college campus. I think one of the, I'm naturally a glass half full person. So one of the things that I think is a really great sort of side effect of COVID, if you have to have a good one, is that colleges have been forced to figure out ways to communicate with you that is not you coming to our campus. And so a lot of us have put a lot of time and energy into ways that you can connect both with the physical campus, also with our students, our faculty, our admission staff. So please seek out those resources. Schools are, I know a lot of schools are doing panels, they're doing virtual tours, they're doing information sessions. We offer opportunities to sit down one-on-one with a current student and ask your questions and just have a conversation. So there really are a wealth of opportunities virtually as well. But I also would recommend you use your wonderful counseling staff to start at the ground floor of, what are the things you're looking for? Do you want to go away from home? Do you want to stay close, big, small, some of those sort of fundamental questions. And then once you kind of have some feel for what that might be, then you can start, looking at best fit schools, both academically and otherwise for you.
And the only other thing that I would add is, just as you're creating your list, to think about cost and making sure that you're considering financial aid, and have that conversation with your students and with your parents and your champions about what is realistic, what might be a little bit of a reach in terms of cost, and make sure you have those conversations with the college reps, whether it's admission counselor, and they can also refer you to the financial aid staff as well.
All right, thank you. This next one is about creating a balanced list of colleges. How would you recommend a student does this? I don't know, is there anybody who wants to take this on? Chris?
I'll take this, and I think having that balanced list, what I also like to say is definitely be realistic. I mean, it's always said to make sure you have that one that could potentially be a reach school, another school that would be a good, where you'd be a great competitor as far as a great applicant for, and then you have those that I don't like usually the word safety school, but a likely school that you would have a good chance to be admitted. And who knows, that school may actually be the best fit for you. As Tara was saying, I mean, the best fit includes financially, academically, socially, athletically. I mean, what that best fit is will be different for each of you. So it's really being realistic. I mean, and one of the things I do is I love telling stories. And part of that is like, when I have a student comes up to me and they say, yeah, I want to play football for Harvard. And you look at them, they're 130 pounds and they're telling your GPA is a B average. That's maybe not being realistic. So, and Tara said the best, I think what it can help you and guide you and to find those balanced schools and potentially best fits are your school counselors, like Mrs. Long. It's like, they know each of us. Like, we go in there all the time. They get to know each institution. So trust their opinion. I mean, I hear it all the time where a recommendation would be given and then it would be brushed off to the side. Like, they know who you are. They know who we are. And they may actually give you that list that will be well balanced as far as where you could potentially be admitted to.
And don't be afraid to put yourself out there too. I know that for a lot of students, this may be the first time that You may have received, that some disappointing news, but it's a learning process. So I think Chris's point is well taken, that you need to be realistic, but I also think you need, as part of this process, just to put yourself out there. And if there's a school that you think may be a reach school for you, and to have a couple of those on your list, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's a good learning process for you. So yeah.
I guess I would say just sort of, I don't want to talk too much about, like, the uber highly selective schools, because that applies to a very, small percentage of students in any environment, and certainly, across the US and the world. But any school in, that admits less than, 20% of students who apply, those are reach schools for everyone. For basically every student, that's going to be a reach school. And so I think it's thinking, I think you might, be the best student, and you think, that you are, going to be able to attain any school. And the truth is that you are one of many, many thousands of students who is doing, sort of the same thing. And so I think it's being really mindful of fit. We've talked about that idea. What are places where you can thrive? Places that want you, as a student, places that will be best for you academically, socially, and et cetera. So instead of, don't get caught up in the name of the school, that someone else has heard of that school before. It has to be the right fit for you, not for your parents' friends, or for the kids in your class. It needs to be the right fit for you. And so try to get away from the name, try to get away from the places that maybe are right in your backyard, unless you really want to stay close to home that everyone has heard of, and think a little bit more broadly about possible great fits, because there are over 4,000 colleges in the United States.
Yeah, that's so true. And the fit is so important. And I do think, it's certainly more difficult for students. I mean, one of the things that I think all of us would say in terms of finding your fit is go onto a college campus, look around. Do the students look like you? And that's really difficult these days, with so much being remote these days. So I think, students are going to have to dig deeper and figure out, what does that fit look like now in these times. The campus visit is something that you talked about a little bit already, in terms of, how do students start this search? But certainly the campus visit has taken on a whole new meaning over the last year for students. So the question is, in what capacity are you offering campus visits this year? Now, I know, everyone has virtual tours, but if you can just talk specifically what that looks like for students, because I know at every institution, it's a little bit different. Is it like a live student walking around the campus? What does that look like on your campuses in terms of the visit? Who wants to start? Mike.
So currently we are closed. We're not closed, but we're operating remotely. But when the campus is open, we do weekly tours. And then we also host tour groups. If there's a particular school or community agency that wants to do a group, we'll set up an individual tour for them. And it is usually a tour that's led by one of the admissions staff over the campus. Currently, because of COVID, the campus is closed to the general public, and we're doing our classes remotely, but we will have a virtual tour available on our website. We're revamping it because the one we had was a little outdated, but that should go live fairly soon.
Yeah, and at Westfield State, we have a tour app that students can download. They can do it from the comfort of their home, or they can get in their car and kind of follow it throughout campus. But it is, our students are narrating it, and there's a video of them, and it really kind of gives you a sense of the physical layout of the university. It's a nice opportunity to kind of get to know our students as well. But we do plan on starting tours in March. And when we do them, you have to be mindful of too, some schools are really restricting the number of guests that you can bring with you, which is really hard because we know this is a family decision. At Westfield State, we limit one guest per student, and it's just out of, an abundance of caution for our tour guides, who are willing and able to do this, and just for our guests as well. And we generally do one family per one tour guide. And that's how we've been doing our tours.
Go ahead, Tara.
Okay, you want me to go? Okay. So Wesleyan's also closed to the public currently. We have been very fortunate to be able to bring our students back. In fact, our students are arriving for the spring semester today, actually. Is the first day. It feels very out of sight, out of mind. I live an hour away from campus and I don't go ever, so it's a little bit hard to remember, but they arrived for the spring semester today. We had an extremely successful fall semester, but one of the things we feel very strongly about is we have to severely limit all outside visitors to campus in order for this, for it to be as safe as possible for our students. So we did that in the fall. We plan to continue to do that for the spring. I think there's a chance, we could invite a very small number of visitors in the summer, but I can't say for sure, and I would not count on it. For a lot of places, I think honestly we're probably looking at the fall before a lot of people will be able to receive any quantity of visitors. We do virtual tours. We do have a video tour. It's a great sort of quick snapshot. There's like drone footage, and so if you really want to get kind of a feel of the physical space of campus, that's really great. But we do offer live tours. We offer them several times every day of the week, and they are with a current student, and you get an opportunity. It's we decided not to do video. Trying to do video with a live presentation is a bit of a technical feat. So it's their pictures, and students are giving tours and they're talking about their experiences. Wesleyan and its opportunity to interact. They're typically quite small, so we really do get a chance to talk to that student and really kind of get a feel for campus life. We also offer information sessions virtually, which we would normally offer on campus. Those are with someone like me, and also a current student talking more generally, about Wesleyan and also about the admission process. So I think, again, a lot of us have come up with, with different ideas, but I think I would echo Emily, everyone I know whose campus is open, for visitors is very heavily restricting visitors. You have to be screened, and there are lots of regulations about traveling out of state. That's the other thing to be really mindful of. So even if Wesleyan was open, we would not be welcoming visitors from out of state right now. And most schools I know are restricting to in-state families only. So that's something to be really mindful of as well, even if you find places that are open.
So at Western New England, we've been pretty successful with the tours. So we've been open for tours on ground in-person tours since June. We are giving 12 tours a day, Monday through Friday, 5 on Saturday and Sundays. We do limit one family per tour guide. So the way I like to approach is saying you're getting a VIP tour. So you get your own personal tour guide. And we do limit the families up to 3 additional families. So a total of 4 guests will come. We brought in a lot of safety measures. We did a huge evaluation as far as what we can and can't do. We are able to take the guests into a couple academic buildings. The only buildings we are unable to take any guests is in to the resident halls for good reasons. Our students in there, so we want to make sure we keep them safe. We actually do keep the social distancing. There's a way that we were able to do it, especially the tour route that we came up with. When families arrive, there is a sign outside that they call to let us know they're here. We actually meet them outside with the tour guide, and then they go around for a tour of the campus. We do also host some virtual events as well. We're going to be some virtual panels, as well as virtual meetings with financial aid, virtual meetings with professors. We are planning hopefully in April to do more on-ground events. We're working out the details right now. And of course, we have to pay attention to any of the regulations that are involved to hopefully allow more accepted students on campus on the weekends, where it gets a little bit warmer and we are able to do things outside. I do know with the outside visitors, we do allow the outside visitors to come, but we do require them to provide a negative COVID test within 72 hours of the visit, or some kind of evidence that they did quarantine for 2 weeks. I think that one's been a little bit more difficult to manage. But we are allowing guests outside to come for a visit. And like I said, I think for us, it's just being a smaller institution, we were able to do this, and we able to put in the safety measures. We have a whole emergency task force team that looked at everything, literally everything of what we can and can't do. And we've been fortunate enough that we were able to make it work. So, and then right now, even this spring, we're offering tours. Our students are back this spring, just like they were in the fall. Because we all kind of want to do this more in person, because I think we're all done looking at each other in the screen too. So, but that's what's going on with Western New England.
Thank you. So the next topic is standardized testing, and that certainly has been very interesting over the last year, with most colleges going test optional. And what we're hearing now is certainly many colleges continuing that trend over the next several years, including many highly selective, which was unusual, I think, in the past. I've read recently, just to list a few: Baylor, Columbia, Cornell, Harvard, Rice, BC, Emory, Williams. They have all recently announced extending their test optional policies. And I do see a trend where I think more and more schools are gonna go that direction. So with so many colleges going test optional, how should a student determine whether to send or not send their scores? Who wants to start?
I know that students aren't at a disadvantage if they send us their test scores, even if they check off that they wish to be test optional. Our new tagline at Westfield is don't stress the test. That we have really, in some ways, this going test optional this past year has really shown us or given us the freedom to focus on students' work in the classroom and by their transcript, by the essays that they submit. We even waived the standardized test scores for our nursing program, which I never thought would happen, and it did. And so I think there's been some great things that have come out of this. So again, there's for Westfield State, and I know that for the Massachusetts State Universities, most of us are test optional at this point, including the UMasses. And then if you submit your SAT scores, there's no harm, and they can only be used to assist you in this process, not harm you.
We've been test optional since 2014. I'm glad of that for a lot of reasons. One major one is that I can't imagine trying to manage all of the complications of this admission season on top of it being our first year test optional. So kudos to anyone who's doing that in their offices. But most of our peer group, in terms of other colleges and universities, are newly test optional. So we were one of the few, in our group. I would say that's really great this year, because it feels like we're really already kind of calibrated, to making decisions when testing isn't present for students. Although it still is a shift for us, we are seeing far fewer tests submitted than we did in past years. I don't know an exact percentage, but I can tell you anecdotally it's a lot less. And I can also tell you we're seeing a lot more students in our pool who are testing only one time, whereas we used to see students who are testing 2-3 times in our particular peer group for sure. And so we are seeing students submit different testing that I definitely think, and a lot of students not submitting. My advice always has been and will continue to be that in our process, testing is optional, and we mean optional. We do not mean, well, we're saying optional, but we really want you to do it. We're not trying to fool you or trick you. We really want you to understand, your own academic strengths. How does your testing fit into your overall academic profile? How does your testing and academic profile fit with the institution? And do you think your testing would be of benefit to you in the process? If the answer to that question is either I'm not sure or no, then I would recommend a student not submit their testing. If the answer is yes, I think this testing would be a positive part of my application. It would help support the academic case of my application. Then you should choose to submit, and you should look at that in context of the individual school to which you're applying. We will look at any scores that are submitted to us. So if your scores are far below, our median scores, that is something we will consider. We can't put our hands over it. It's optional for you, not us. So I think that's something to just understand. So think critically about whether you want your testing to be part of your application, but there is no penalty or harm to choosing not to submit testing. We do not assume your testing is very poor comparisons. We simply just don't factor that in to our overall evaluation of you as a student. And so I think that's really important. I know there's a lot of anxiety, about testing, and all these schools have gone test optional, but they must still really want me to do it. It'll give me an advantage. It will help me. Talk to the individual schools, understand their approach. And And hopefully the answer is either it can only be used to help you, or it is truly your choice and you can decide, because it really should be optional. There are also some schools that are test blind. This might be new to you all. There aren't that many, but these are schools that do not consider tests at all. Period, end of story. I wouldn't be surprised if we might see some more of those places crop up over the next few years, as places are kind of getting a sense of what it's like to do admission without testing if they haven't done that before. But I do think that that's something also to consider. But we want you to be able to make conscious choices, in this process, and decide how to put forward your best application.
I'm just gonna echo briefly what Emily and Tara said too. Is I think in the end, the biggest thing is going back to what I said earlier, is just to having that communication with each college and university, because every single one is going to be differently. And I really, truly believe with the pandemic and how it canceled the SATs constantly, that it is going to change things forward. I really, truly think it's going to change, and more institutions, I think, are going to keep it and test optional around the same time as Wesleyan, since like 2014 for all programs. And I think for even us, we had to reevaluate what we're going to be doing with test optional, because in the past, in the past years, we were average about 20% of our applicant pool will go test optional, and this year alone, we're at 70% of our applicant pool is test optional. So now we have to look at that for a good reason for the future. Say, all right, what if this happens, or do we need to change any of our parameters? I know at Western New England, one of the things I always say is, if you're not sure whether to go test optional or not, just call me and let's sit down, let's talk. Well, I can guide you. I mean, I've guided students and gave recommendations, but in the end, it is your choice. But you definitely want to make sure, because each school is going to be a little bit different as far as like, okay, you're going to submit your scores, then we're going to need them. There are some schools that went test optional this year that now are saying like, yeah, we're test optional, but if you want merit money, now you got to submit your test scores. So that communication is going to be absolutely key with each college and university, because we're all test optional. We're all going to be doing differently. But in the end, and I think Emily said this too, is going test optional is not a bad thing. And in some cases, going test optional might actually give you a little bit more of an advantage than showing your test scores too. But it's just really going back to that communication. That's going to be key.
Yeah, and I think, we're getting more and more away from standardized testing. I mean, we all know the subject tests have just been eliminated from the College Board. The essay has been removed from the SAT. So I think, for me personally, I think we're moving in a positive direction in that respect. Mike, I want to give you an opportunity too. I know in some cases, standardized tests have been required by some of your programs, and I'm just wondering, where you have gone with that for some of your specialized programs.
Certainly. As a community college, we're an open enrollment institution. However, we do have certain selective admissions programs. Some of our allied health programs still have the SATs. There's perhaps 2 or 3 of them that still have the SATs as part of their admissions requirements. However, the SATs for those programs have either become completely optional, or the requirement to submit the SATs can be waived if the student has at least 15 college credits and a 3.0 or higher. So for the handful of programs that still require them, they can either be optional, or they're going to be waived if the student has a few credits under their belt and meets a certain GPA standard.
So with the elimination, I mean, Wesleyan, we know, has been a long time. Chris, you said the same thing with Western New England. With so many colleges, now being test optional, are you aware of, or are you using other criteria to make the admission decision? Like, did you add additional criteria for those of you who have been doing this, or it's just it's the same information that students have? Okay.
Well, for us, we just made a slight change to our most selected programs with engineering and pharmacy. So because those programs, I should say, were only programs in the past that were test optional. We went test optional before COVID hit with engineering and pharmacy. So what we ended up doing is we raised some of our individual parameters as far as the science and math background. So because in the past that they had now we're looking at it in a way where, all right, you might need a little bit of a higher math average in order to show us that you can handle a rigorous program like that too. So it was a slight change.
Yeah, I think we experimented with a supplement, a supplemental essay when we went test optional, and promptly decided it just wasn't worth. We weren't getting enough from it. We thought maybe we'd want something. I think for the most part, most places have tried to streamline the process and not add more hurdles for students to go through, which is a good thing. I think, but for the most part, I haven't heard of a lot of places that are adding a bunch more supplements or making people do interviews or really trying to eliminate barriers as opposed to put more in place.
All right. The next several questions are related to the transcript. Has the transcript become more important now in the absence of test scores? How important is the level of rigor? So college prep course. So when you're looking at the overall transcript, what is it that you're looking for in terms of the rigor?
I know for us, we do like to see the rigorousness, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that if you are taking a more rigorous course, like an AP or an honors course, or even a dual enrollment, that you feel like you can handle that course. Because I mean, this year I haven't seen as much compared to past years where students like will rush in and say, well, I need this AP course, I need this honors course because I want to get this college and it's going to look better. And yeah, it can look better, but if you end up getting a D in the course or failing it, then that's just going to look really poorly on your application. Whereas if you took a college prep course and got an A or a B, that's probably going to look a little bit better in your case. And so that would be my recommend. I mean, there's other schools where I would probably recommend, having more of the honors and APs and so forth is really going to be a little bit more beneficial, but it's going back that a lot of schools are going to be different. I do know with this pandemic, we are with the transcripts, especially with the seniors we're working with, and I know it's going to be with the juniors, we are looking at a little bit differently and more in your favor. I mean, there are some schools that went with credit, no credit, some that just went pass, fail. So, I mean, we're ready for pre-calc, and it's just not going to be worked into the calculation. But overall, with the transcript too, keep in mind, we're looking at all 4 years, and all 4 years are going to be important. So from freshman year all the way to what you're going to be doing in senior year. And keep in mind, even as seniors, when you get your acceptance letter, all of us are going to have a clause in there saying you're accepted upon still meeting the requirements at graduation, which means we do not want you to get senioritis. All right. It's a nasty bug that goes around where I'm like, hey, I'm accepted. I can just sit back and relax. And then all of a sudden we get your final transcript, because we're all going to require a final transcript to show that you graduate and that you're still meeting the requirements. And then you go from B's and A's down to D's and F's. We're going to ask why. But even with, like I said, with the transcripts this year, a lot of students have stories, and we're just going to have to take it all in consideration. And I mean, yes, we are going to be taking more risk on students this year based on what they experienced in the pandemic and so forth, and we may not have in the past. I mean, it's not a large number, but we are really looking through it at a fine-tooth comb. And the other thing too is the upward trajectory. Like, you want to go from like doing really well freshman year and keep going up. Like, if you're doing really well freshman year and then you're going downhill, we're going to ask why. And I'm sure my colleagues will go a little bit more in depth on that too, because I don't want to take over.
At the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're going to be. The last thing that we want to do is to admit students who may not be ready for one reason or another to come to our university. When we accept you and you enroll, our goal is to graduate you and to graduate you in 4 years. And so, working at Westfield State, we work with students too, where we have those honest conversations of saying, we've gone through your high school transcript, we've recalculated your grade point average because we're required to, and our recommendation would be maybe starting off at the community college. And as a transfer counselor at Westfield too, I work with students who may start off at STIC, where Michael works, and get enrolled in a program and have this pathway, or what we call mass transfer, to one of the 4-year public schools. The other thing I just want to mention, that for the state universities in the Commonwealth, as well as the UMass's, we require students to take a math course in their senior year in high school. What we were finding is that many students were kind of not opting to take a math course in their senior year, but then when they got to the four-year school, we all require, as part of our general education requirements, for students to take 2 math courses depending on their major. And so make sure that you're keeping in mind, it goes to what Chris said, make sure that your senior year schedule is still rigorous, and that you have a balance. And I would also say that if you take an honors or an AP course and you get a C, to me that's okay. It shows that you put yourself out there and you tried it, but you don't want to overload yourself with all of these honors and AP courses, so it really sets you up for failure.
I would say at Wesleyan, rigor and breadth of course selection is paramount. We're looking for students to be, not overloading yourself. You need to determine for yourself, what is the level of challenge I can accept. And still, be able to be to manage that and be successful in that selection of courses. I think that is also part of how you're figuring out, what colleges are good fits for you. What you're hearing from us will tell you a little bit about what places, might be looking for a student like you. At Wesleyan, we always get the question, do you want to see A's in college prep courses or B's in AP courses? I'm going to be 100% honest. We're looking for students who are getting A's in AP courses. We're looking for students who are able to be at the, highest level of success in the most rigorous set of courses that they're capable, of taking that their school offers. And you all, at Longmeadow have a very, rigorous course load that you have access to, and Wesleyan would want to see you availing yourself of those courses. We would also want to see that as much as possible, you're taking all 5 core academic subjects, so English, social studies, math, foreign language, and science, all 4 years of high school. We do not have admission requirements, but we are looking for those 5 core academic subject areas each year, ideally, from your academic program. So rigor and breadth are very, very important, as well as obviously success in that broad, rigorous academic program.
Yeah, you all made good points in terms of, the number of courses. Emily, you mentioned the Mass State requirements, and we actually take that page out of the university booklet and put it in our sophomore meeting guide. So when we're meeting with sophomores, and I always call our sophomore meeting the kickoff to the college process, we use that as an example. I mean, we're not assuming that every student is applying to a state university in Massachusetts. However, you do have that 4th year of taking a math in your senior year. And what we explain to our students is that our graduation requirements at Longmeadow High School are minimal. I mean, I don't know if any of you are aware on the panel, but our graduation requirements from Longmeadow High School, you'd probably be shocked to see. We only require 2 years of math, 2 years of science. We don't have a language requirement. However, as you know, most of our students are college bound. So we share that as an example, the university requirements, to show that, even though you can graduate from LHS, you still need to continue in your core courses throughout your high school career. So it's so important that you do that. I think it is important to have that 4th year of math if you can, the 3 to 4 years of lab science, continue with your language as far as you can. So thanks for also saying that. If a student feels like they have not done as well academically as they would have liked, can you talk about the different programs that are available to students who started a community college, Mike?
Absolutely. So while we do have a number of students that enroll in the community college for maybe one of our more career-based programs, something in STEM like electrical engineering or an allied health field such as dental hygiene, a significant number of our applicants are looking to use the community college as a stepping stone onto a 4-year college or university. So we've already mentioned the mass transfer agreements. Those are the articulation agreements between the 15 community colleges in the Commonwealth and all of the state colleges and universities. There's actually a mass transfer website where you can look up these transfer pathways. For example, I want to start at STCC and then I'm going to transfer to Westfield State. You can see which pathways, which majors and programs are available for that transfer articulation. Kind of the broad view of it is if you graduate from one of the transfer pathways at one of the 15 community colleges and you get a 2.5 GPA or higher, you can automatically transfer on to a junior year at one of the four-year state colleges or universities. There are some exceptions to that. There's 4 majors at UMass Amherst specifically. They're computer science, nursing, engineering, and I'm drawing a blank on the last one, unfortunately, but those programs require a slightly higher GPA. The articulation is still in effect, just that target GPA to transfer is still there. Additionally, we and our sister community colleges also have articulation agreements with the private four-year colleges and universities, which is called joint admissions. So, for example, if you want to go to Western New England University or AIC, we also participate in transfer pathways with the private colleges. It works a little bit different. The GPA that you would need to transfer is going to vary a little bit depending upon the college that you're transferring to and the program that you're in. Just like the UMass example with the state schools, if you want to transfer onto a more selective program at some college like Western New England University or Springfield College, you may need a slightly higher GPA than if you're transferring in for a psychology program. It is a fantastic way, whether you're going to complete your associate's degree or maybe even just stop in with us for a semester or two to raise your grades, and then go out and transfer out to a four-year college, either with that associate's degree under your belt and transferring in as a junior, or just raising your GPA so you're a more competitive applicant. So you might be more admissible than you were right out of the gate when you graduated from high school.
Thanks, Mike.
I don't know if you want us to talk about, I think they're also, starting at a community college is a great pathway for students, no matter where you want to go to college. You might want to go to a four-year institution if that's something you want to do, after community college. Many Wesleyan students are community college transfers. So even the most, selective schools in the country are, there's variability. Some have very few spaces for transfers. We're very lucky to have roughly 75 transfers a year. That's about 10% of our student body. And a large number, of those students are coming either as 1 or 2 years of community college, under their belts. And some of them did not have, particularly successful high school careers. They went to community college. They worked really hard. They did not have been, possible for them to attend out of their high school experience. I can think of many students who we have admitted to Wesleyan who fit that bill. So there are lots of options available to you, even if high school, hasn't set you up for admission to a four-year school. Community colleges are a wonderful way to kind of get your feet underneath you and to be able to show that you can do the work at the college level.
Right, and that's actually a really good point. If while we have set transfer agreements with the other state universities and our local private institutions, if you are transferring or maybe looking to come to our school and then eventually go to a school like Wesleyan that there's not an existing transfer articulation, I always encourage students to speak to that four-year college first and kind of backwards engineer the process. Find out what that college wants, what the requirements are for that school and that particular program, and then they can work with our academic advising team to take those specific classes in order to transfer out. So you can still do it even if there's not an existing transfer agreement. You just have to do one little extra step and talk to that four-year college first, find out what they want, and then take that when you're with us.
Right, that's a good point. And I think, when we meet with freshmen in their freshman meeting, there's such a different student as ninth graders compared to when they get to their senior year. And, there's that occasional student every year who, has some regrets because they really didn't know what that freshman year meant. And as much as we told them it counts, it's a long way away from graduating from high school. So Chris, you mentioned that upward trend, that's what you like to see. But, is there a difference between how a student has performed academically in their freshman year in comparison to their senior year? Is there any leeway there? I guess that's the question.
So I guess the answer to that is it depends. Freshman year always is going to be that transition. And to be honest, when you have that transition freshman year, it's going to be the same transition you're going to have freshman year in college. It's getting used to a different type of coursework, the course load, and everything else. I've worked with students where freshman year wasn't as great, but then they really stepped it up. And then senior year, they really showed potential. I mean, we can review applications with just freshman, sophomore, and junior year, but in some cases, we may request senior year grades because we want to see, like, are you keeping up with that performance? And are you showing? And I think Emily mentioned this as well, is really in the end, when we're looking at all 4 years, it's really in the end, we're saying, are you going to be successful at our institution? And that's why it's like freshman year is absolutely still very important, but there's other things that can help enhance your application than just focusing on freshman year. If you have one bad freshman year and sophomore, junior, and senior are looking great, you could still be competitive for that institution. So I don't want students to all of a sudden feel like, oh, you know, I should have stepped it up. Because there is that possibility. Or maybe there was a story besides the transition. Maybe something happened. Maybe something happened in your family life or whatever that you can explain to that college or university. And that's okay. I mean, some look at it as an excuse. I look at it as like, all right, now you're telling us why your grades are the way they are. But in the end, we still need to make sure we're evaluating that. Are you going to be successful at our institution?
Anybody else want to add anything? How important is the course selection and grades in the senior year? And I know some of you have already answered that, so I don't know if there's anything more that you want to add, or I can move on to the next one.
I think it's really important to remember, I think your point, Donna, about, you know, some schools, you know, Longmeadow is a great example, don't have a lot of graduation requirements, and especially for students who might have been, you know, accelerating in their coursework or taking AP and honors, you know, sometimes there's that temptation to let the foot off the gas. And to say, well, I only really need to take 4 courses this year, or I only, you know, then I could, like, you know, take an extra study hall or do, you know, and I think that there's, you know, I would really recommend, you know, that your senior year, in my opinion, is the pinnacle, you know, in terms of, you know, the level of rigor, and honestly, it should be also in some ways, you know, the pinnacle of your performance, because it's everything you've learned, both, you know, from a you know, actual content perspective, but also just learned in being a student, and how to be successful over the course of your high school career. So and I will go back again to the fact we look at the whole year, even though you're admitted in the middle, you know, of it, we look at the whole year. So don't let your foot off the gas, challenge yourself. Again, choose courses across the curriculum, even if your school is not forcing you to do it, and be prepared for college. This is your last year to be prepared to step into that college environment. And if you let your foot off the gas there, that's a much more challenging leap to make into that first year at the college or university level. So I would highly recommend, you know, seeing that as that final year of preparation and taking that mindset.
And just to add on to that, besides taking those courses senior year, making sure you're taking the right course. And what I mean by that is, if you know what major you wish to pursue in college, is understanding that there are certain courses that they want to see while you're in high school. Now, granted, trying to tell any 16, 17, 18-year-old, hey, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I mean, people are going to change. But even at that time, like I know for example, with Westfield State in nursing, they're probably going to require certain math and science courses compared to maybe psychology, and Emily, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just throwing that out there. But it's like at Western New England, like if a student has an interest in engineering, and then you're in Algebra 2 junior year, and then all of a sudden senior year, like, you know what, I want to take it a little easy and take stats. Well, you have your 4 years in math, but now you don't have the prereqs, you don't have that pre-calc that we're looking to see. So it's really studying your curriculum and knowing, like, all right, if I'm looking at nursing, or if I'm looking at engineering, or if I'm looking at psychology or business, or whatever major a student's looking at, what courses do I need to have as an undergrad to meet at least one of those requirements? Because it's not always about the grade 2, it's also what courses are you taking to make sure you're going to be prepared for that program to start off.
The only other thing I want to mention too is that I want to let parents and students know that it's okay if the student does not know what they want to major in as they're going through this process. I know I have a 17-year-old at home who, that's her biggest worry about this process, is that she has not figured out what she wants to do. And I keep saying to her, that's okay. This is an exploratory process. You're going to keep your mind open. And when you're looking at schools, look to make sure that they have a variety of course offerings and majors that you think you might be interested in. And I'll also share with you that all of us have what we refer to as general education requirements. At Westfield State, we refer to them as Common Core of Studies. And while some students may look at it and say, why do I have to take these courses? Part of the reason that we want you to do it is it really helps you explore or expose you to all areas of study. So you think you may want to be an accounting major, but then you happen to take, intro to a political science course and realize that, oh my goodness, this is what I really want to do. So I'm a minor in another area, but I really want to be a political science major. So I just want to reassure families that your students that you don't have to know at this moment what it is that you want to do to embark on this whole college search process.
And you can use the four of us as good examples, because I don't think any of us went to college to become admissions counselor. So you never know where your life's going to take you. So.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Emily. I mean, we often say that to our students as well. I know, when you're paying a lot of money for college, it's kind of hard to, for maybe parents and students to really, grasp. They feel like they need to find something, especially when they may be talking to peers who seem to have, their whole life planned out for them.
At Wesleyan, at Wesleyan, you don't even tell us what you want. I mean, we ask you what your interest might be, and we admit you to the university, and you have 2 years to figure it out. So, and then you still are taking a bunch of electives. You can double major. I always tell students, graduate school, that's when it's time to like really drill down. Undergrad, get a really good foundation, get, that more general education. And there's some places where you're going to get a more career focused major, but I would hope that you would, think of your undergraduate years as partially at least time to explore and learn, about a wide variety of subjects, because a lot of schools don't require you to have any idea. We embrace the undecided student very much.
Yeah, and I think most high schools, have your general core subjects. I think we're fortunate. We have, an extensive business department. We have music, we have art, we have all these different elective programs at Longmeadow. But I always say to students, look, you're going to see so much more. And like you said, Emily, you may take a political science course or some other particular class that, is not offered at the high school. And you take different paths and you kind of figure things out, and it's professors that you meet that you might get connected with. And that's kind of how you figure it all out. One of the things that sometimes happens at Longmeadow High School, we do put a WP and a WF on the transcript. So sometimes students make the decision to challenge themselves by enrolling in a higher level class, whether they've been recommended for it or whether they waive into a higher level class. And, we encourage that. We want them to try it. But if it ends up being too difficult, how do you look at that WP and or a WF on a transcript?
For the so are you saying the WF, is that considered a failed grade?
So they were failing when they dropped the class. In some cases, it may be a WP because they were still passing.
Okay. Yeah, at Westfield State, I don't think we would use that against the student in our GPA calculation. And even if we did, think of it as we're taking a cumulative grade point average. So one course is not going to completely throw your overall GPA off. And we're looking at the entire picture. The last thing that we're going to do is look at a transcript to figure out how we cannot accept a student. We're kind of looking at it as, we want to accept you. And so we're going to take certain factors into consideration. And as I said multiple times, I look at it as a student who took an honors or an AP course and maybe got a C as an okay thing. And so don't let one course, we're not going to let it derail an admission decision at Westfield.
And we're the same. We're not going to let that count negatively on the students' review process. And just like Emily said, we're trying to figure out how to accept you. So when in doubt, we always say we're going to give the student the benefit of the doubt.
I think for us, it would be important to have some context if possible. I think either from a student or from a counselor about, what was going on. I think I always tell students mystery is your enemy in this process because we really try really hard not to, but it's very hard not to sort of imagine what could have happened. and it's always better to just know what happened. And so I would encourage you that if you have any, if you have a withdrawal failing, if you have a failing grade on your transcript, that you communicate with that college, that that's what this happened for this reason, and maybe the reason is really helpful to us and makes us feel much more reassured, about what happened in that circumstance. I'm going to be honest, we would look at what that was and what course it was in. Is that one of your core academic courses? What level, was that course in? Was it at too high of a level and you drop down? What is the exact scenario? So I can't say it would have no impact, but I can say we would look at it critically to try to figure out exactly how it fits into your overall academic program and to understand why it's there before we make any sort of particular judgments about it. So I definitely encourage you to make sure that it isn't just sitting there on your transcript, but that you do take the time to either yourself or to ask your counselor to address it in their letter for you, or in an additional piece of information to us. That's always really, really helpful for anything that we might see that might be a question mark for us.
All right. This next question is related to the essay. So the Common Application, accepted by hundreds of colleges, has 7 essay prompts to choose from. Do you have any advice on how students get started?
Oh, Chris loves the essay question.
I love the essay question.
I'm going to defer to Chris because he gives a great answer every time.
Here's what, literally we could probably do a whole nother hour just on this. Here's how I look at the essay. In the end, all we want to know is about you, all about who you are and why you're going to be successful at the institution. Now, I know the Common App has the 7 prompts, and feel free to use them. I know my favorite is when they brought back the topic of your choice. And I do get a lot of students that sit down and say, well, I don't know what to write. I don't think I'm interesting enough. I always say every student has a story to tell. They all have a story to tell. And if you just tell us like who you are, maybe you talk about your career, what's unique about you, what have you done, how many students have done before, maybe there was a certain event in your life that affected your grades, like write about that. Because we really, I can tell you, there's a lot of essays that we read that I just sit there and I'm like, oh, and here's another one of these. Like one of the examples I always use is I love sports, but I see so many students write about that, but more specifically write about how they won the big game. You can write about sports, that's fine, but like, what did it do for you? How did it change who you are? And I've had a couple this year, I give them credit. The essay was well written, because at first I was just like, yeah, I know where this is going. But even if you're writing about a relative, all right, like, yeah, you're writing about Aunt Susie, but we're not trying to accept Aunt Susie. What did Aunt Susie do for you that made who you are today? And like I said, in the end, it's like really using that essay to help enhance your application, to really say like, tell us why you're going to be successful here. And there are a few like don'ts I always like to mention, and I know everyone might be a little bit different, but I always say, as long as you don't plagiarize, as long as you don't write how much you like to do homework or go to school, or you don't write about another school being your first choice. Like if you submit an essay to Western New England and said, Wesleyan's my first choice, I can't wait to go there, I'm done reviewing your application, because you basically told me that you're going to Wesleyan, so why would I want to admit you? Or the biggest thing too is, and I actually seen a couple of this happen this year already, is sending an essay like you're sending a text message. Like, don't allow us to figure out what you're trying to say. Like, write LYOU, don't write you, all right? Don't write being the number 4, and just proper grammar. I know we're not all the best when it comes to grammar, but when I read a sentence and there's words capitalized in between that we know that it's not supposed to be capitalized, like, have people double check your work, all right? And we also want to hear your voice. Like, we can always tell when a parent's writing it or someone else wrote it for you. Because I mean, I've had cases where students were coming in with a C average and they were using words. And I'm like, I have no clue what they're trying to say, because was that their voice? Like, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear about you. And I've read some essays where students really opened up and it was deep to the point where like, I felt like I was putting myself in their shoes. And that's the essays that we really love. And I'm going to give a good example. I had a student up in Maine, and Emily and Tara, I think, heard this story before, but I had a student up in Maine. It was my first year working in admissions. And you looked at her first 3 years, and academically, she was like 0.01 above what we were looking for. And the senior year, she was pulling all A's. So it's going back to say how much weight do you put on the senior year and freshman year. But then we read her essay, and anything that could go wrong her first 3 years did. And it was traumatizing, to be honest. I mean, it was to the point where another counselor read the essay and was like crying. But we took it to a committee and we said, you know what, let's give her a chance. Let's just, there's something about her. Her essay really stuck out. She's visited the campus. She's showing us she's interested. let's see if she can do this. So we decided to admit her. And when she came to campus, I actually went up to her and I had the privilege of meeting her. And I said, listen, I really thank you for opening up in your essay. And I really feel bad of all the incidents that happened over time because they were pretty severe. And she said, no, I got to thank you. She's like, I applied to 10 schools and you're the only one to admit me. And she came to Western New England. She actually graduated in 4 years and was on the president's list, which means she had above a 3.5. So that essay told us a story about her. She told us about who she is and what's happened in her life. And that really got to us. So like I said, if you're an athlete, I'm an athlete, but just please, I know you won the big game, but that doesn't do anything for you. So, but I don't know if the others want to chime in.
I would just say, I think that's all really, really great advice. I think it needs to be what you want to write about, what you think is important to communicate, not what you think I want to read. I think that's something students get stuck there and they worry that, well, yeah, I could write about that. That sounds interesting to me, but I don't think that's what the school wants to hear about. If you're not excited to write it, getting started writing an essay is going to be miserable for you. It needs to be a topic you're interested in that connects with you, that you think communicates something about yourself that you want us to know. And it could be part of your story. It could be often an experience is a really good place to start. Something that's happened to you probably over the last few years that might have changed your perspective or made you think differently, or, those are usually good, sort of catalyst experiences to write an essay about. But I would say that those are all really important things to think about is what do you want to tell us, not what you think this magical topic is that's going to get you in to whatever school it might be. People ask me all the time, what's the best topic? I will be honest, I don't even look at what topic you picked at the top. I have an application open on my computer right behind y'all right now, and I don't even look because I don't really care what topic you picked. I just care what you write. And so I just want to hear your story. I want to know what you're trying to tell me. In fact, I should be able to read your whole essay. And then if you did pick a topic, hopefully I can go back and go, oh yeah, okay. Like this is what the essay was about. I don't need you to tell me you're writing an essay about a time you experienced failure and how you overcame it. Just write the essay. I'm going to know that you are choosing that. If the prompts are helpful to you, then utilize them. Absolutely. If you don't know where to start, that can be a really good way to kind of get yourself going. If it's not, and you just want to write about something else, that's okay. It can't be your life story. It's not enough space for your entire life story. Even if you don't feel like you've experienced much, yes, please proofread. I've been doing this long enough. I used to do this by hand. And I would turn into your high school English teacher with like the pet. We want a clean piece of writing that tells us something about you that you think is important for us to know. That's what your job is for the essay. And I think that we all are able to then kind of put that into the context of the rest of your application, but it is your chance to speak for you. And so I think you don't want to lose that opportunity. You want to take that opportunity and do it to the best of your ability. Put the thesaurus away. There's my last piece of advice, please. I consider myself someone who has a pretty good vocabulary. And if I cannot understand the words you're using in your essay, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say you probably don't know them and you just highlighted them and clicked thesaurus. Put the thesaurus away, please. All of your college admission reps will thank you.
So we talked about test optional schools. So without the testing, that's basically out of the picture with many schools now. You're looking at the transcript. A lot of that can look very similar when you're comparing one student to another. So outside of academics, what are colleges looking for? What else are you looking for within that application?
We're also checking to see above and beyond academics, we allow students to let us know what they may have done for community service, that they may have juggled a part-time job, played a varsity sport, was responsible for taking care of siblings. So we encourage students to also let us know what they're passionate about outside of the classroom. At the end of the day, we're trying to build a community of students. And when we accept you, we're looking to see what you may have been involved in and hope that you also want to be involved in our community at Westfield State. It really makes a huge difference in terms of your college experience. And I also want to let students know that it doesn't need to be a whole list of things that you've done. Some students will just give an example that they were really involved in their their church group or community. And to me, that's valuable. I don't need to know that you were involved in 6 different clubs and activities, because it's going to make me wonder how much you were able to put in for an effort for all of those, although it's okay. So we like to know what students have been involved in. And the other thing too is that we also sometimes, if you're maybe a student that's on the fence for us academically, we'll drill a little bit deeper to see, have you been for a campus visit? Have you reached out to an admission counselor? How invested are you? And to us, that's telling as well.
And just to add on to that, and Emily started talking about this too, is reach out to us. I mean, your biggest advocate to get in will be your admissions counselor. So anytime you have an admission counselor that will visit Longmeadow High School or do a college fair, normally 8, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to be the person reviewing your application. And I can't tell you how many times I would have a counselor come up to me, because I do all the double checks of the files, and say, hey, I met this student. I really feel like they're going to be successful. I know they're a little bit low on this end, but let me point out some of the positives. And I take their word. I mean, this is the relationship they build with the students. So don't be afraid to contact us. I mean, we don't bite. We're very nice. At least I think we are. So we're very nice, because in the end, like I said, our goal is to figure out, how do we accept you and show us that you're going to be successful, and just having that open lines of communication. And not only that, the more questions you ask, you're going to find out this process is actually not that hard. It actually can be a pretty easy process, and you just have to reach out. And like I said, every college will have a counselor that has a territory. You can probably find it on the website. Most of them will have it, or you can just call the school and say, can I speak to my admissions counselor? Because that's really going to help you through the process. It's going to guide you a lot better.
Yeah, I would say at Wesleyan, what you do outside of the classroom, who you are outside of the classroom, is just as important as what you do in the classroom, but your academic record. I use a lot of very weird illustrations for understanding this process, but the way I describe it is your academic record at Wesleyan gets your foot in the door. You put your foot between the door, and it's what means the door doesn't shut. The rest of your application is what opens the door all the way. We have way more applications from students who are academically who we're looking for than we could possibly take. So we have to start choosing students based on what they do outside of the classroom. We're looking for students who have been able to be meaningfully engaged in their communities. That could be school, local community, could be even beyond that, depending on the student. Students who have been able to be impactful and make impact in their communities, students who have been able to take on leadership if that's available, in their communities as well. Students who bring their background, their experiences. We have students from all over the country and all over the world. We're looking for students we're building an intentional community, and every single student is part of building that intentional community for us. And so, that's one of the things when schools are selective, they're able to start in some ways shaping the group of students who ultimately enroll. So for us, when I'm reading an application, a student being a great student with a good rigorous academic program, that's the line that you have to cross first. And then I go and I look at all the other pieces of the student's application and how do I see that student contributing to our campus life. This is true, I think, very much for Westfield and for Western New England. We're residential, at least to some extent. Wesleyan, we're 100% essentially residential. We are building a community where students are active and engaged on campus. And so we want people who will do that, on our campus at Wesleyan, because we see that as integral to the learning experience. It is not just about those holistic people, to be part of our campus community. So we look very, very, in detail into that list of extracurricular activities you provide. What are you doing? How much do you do it? What kinds of roles have you taken on? How have you made an impact in your communities? And we also look at what people say about your impact in communities, your counselor, your teachers. So those pieces are really, really critical. And I would say that that's definitely something you could extrapolate out certainly to schools in that highly selective tier. We're going to look at that very, very much carefully.
All right, thank you. So we're getting towards the end of the questions. These next couple of questions are related to students with learning disabilities, so very specific. What advice would you give to a student on disclosing their learning disability in the admission process?
I can tell you from Westfield State's perspective that we highly encourage students to do it. The more information we know about the student, the better we can service you. So for us specifically, we have it's called the Binaco's academic program. It's been in existence for over 40 years, which gives students with documented learning differences support above and beyond what is mandated by federal law. And as we keep mentioning, when we accept you, we want to graduate you. That's our intention, and it's beneficial. It's not used against the student in this admission process. And the student goes through an interview process so that they can explain what their learning needs are, and our services can let the student know what we have, and just as importantly, what we don't have for support service, at the university. Trio support programs for students so that if they don't disclose it in their freshman year or as they transfer to Westfield, they can then get the support through this program. But again, the transition from high school to college is a huge one for any student. And the more that we can have set up for you ahead of time before you start in the classroom, honestly, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think, well, we certainly, would never require a student to disclose. I always encourage students to really think about it. Again, as I said before, mystery is not always a great thing. Often disclosure of learning differences can help us really put, especially academic records, into context. We see lots of students who finally get a diagnosis and get accommodations, and they turn, it's like night and day in their academic record. If we don't know that, we don't know what was going on before. One assumption is you didn't care about school, or you were, so I think it's really important for us to understand some context. You don't necessarily have to divulge every single detail. If you don't want to, you certainly can if you'd like, but I encourage students to do that. And I also encourage students, any school you're serious about, reach out to their student support services, find out what the accommodations look like on that campus, because there are obviously things we're required to do legally, but schools have different levels of what they do beyond that, and you need to figure out if that place is going to be right for you. I would also tell you, I think that schools that are admitting, schools that like Wesleyan that are highly selective can still be great places, for students with learning differences. We have many students who utilize those support services on our campus and come, from high school with that, and we are very supportive. We have excellent services, and I think every school is hoping to kind of meet each student kind of where they are, in their process. And I think that we want to encourage students to be able to be honest with us, and that's not going to hurt you. Disclosing a learning difference is not going to hurt you. In the admission process, I think there's sometimes concern there that somehow that's going to be judged, and it definitely will not be.
We're the same what Tara and Emily said, so I don't need to echo too much. It's exactly the same.
All right.
I'm sorry. I would also, not just for this particular instance, all colleges and universities have a tremendous student support network. And most of us go into this career field because we like working with students. So if you need any sort of help with anything at any college or university, please ask. At most institutions, the only time someone doesn't get assistance is when they don't actually reach out and let someone know they need help. So regardless of what it is, please ask someone. If that office doesn't deal with that particular issue, they're going to point you to who does, and maybe even walk you down to that office. So any sort of assistance you need, we all have tremendous student support resources available. So please take advantage of it.
Yeah, not asking is a weakness. I think a lot of students have ingrained in their mind if they ask a question and it makes them look dumb or they look weak. Totally opposite. Those who ask questions are the ones succeeding because they're getting the information, the support they need. So Mike hit that right on the money.
Does anyone want to add to this question? How does a student know if a school or program will fit their academic needs?
I mean, that's a tough question because there's 4,400 great schools. I think the biggest thing is just, I know visiting is one, trying to walk around and see how the students are, but I know that's kind of difficult right now, but I think it's just, if you have the opportunity to talk to a faculty member, find out how the program is taught, because it's going to be different at each school. I mean, like I said, whether it's Dick, Wesleyan, Western New England, Westfield State, a lot of the information you're going to learn is relatively the same, but how it's taught, who's teaching it, and the resources and the opportunities that are available, that's what makes colleges different. And you're not really going to know that unless you're there. Like I said, a little bit different right now with the pandemic and everything else. But I really think if you can look at the course curriculum, look to see what courses, if there's internships available, how many, what can I get credit? If there's more exponential learning, like, or field experiences that you can do. Also look at the size of the classes. Like larger universities, you're going to be probably taught by a TA, where you're going to be in a class of 300. Maybe that doesn't fit your learning style, or maybe you're going to be in a classroom of 20 to 30 and you get to know the professor and they have office hours. That might be your learning style. There are some colleges out there where I know there's one college up in Maine where a lot of the coursework, because they do a lot of, they're experts and they do a lot of programs with more like environmental science and forestry and fire science, where maybe a lot of it's more outdoors instead of being lectured to. Or what projects or portfolios do I get to complete? Or when do I get to do my research? Or when do I actually get to start my major? That's another question. Because that's going to be different. I mean, there's some schools you have to wait until you're a junior or senior before you can dive into the actual coursework, where some is as a freshman. So it's part of going with the research. You just have to do your research, look at the curriculum, look at the program, look at what opportunities are done outside the classroom compared to inside. But yeah, it's a tough one, because usually I always say you go visit and see what the programs have to offer, but that's a little bit challenging now.
I'm sure Emily might be able to, you said that you have a 17-year-old, is that correct? So you're going to undergo, parents would understand this, those of us who are older, a tremendous amount of growth between the age of 17 and 22. So you're embarking on this experience at a time where you even if you didn't go to college, you'd be going through, a lot of personal growth in that time. And so I think who you think you are and what you, or how you understand the world when you're 17 might not be, how you understand it and what you think when you're 21 or 22. Find some place that at least has some ability to grow with you, that allows you, at least some flexibility. There are some students who know, right? They're honed in. It's the thing they've always wanted to do. They know they want to be a nurse, or they know they want to be an engineer. And I would say those students are a little bit, more few and far between than the students who maybe have a concept, or, well, someone told me once that I'd be good at this, or, I think my parents expect me to be, this, or these are the jobs I've heard of before, or the majors I've heard of before. I always tell students, most of what we offer at Wesleyan, the vast majority of high school students have never taken a course in that subject. And so there's a whole world, out there of things to study and careers to have, like, admission counselor, where there's no major for that. And there is, a whole world out there. And so I think having a school that will, even if you're in a specific program, will allow you to explore and will allow you to try things, and that, would hopefully allow you to move to something else if you really didn't have a good fit in an academic program. I think that this is a time where you are going to be sort of shaping who you are as an adult in the world, and you need a school that's going to help you do that, not just get a job, but help you be, the person you're going to be, and the, citizen, that you're going to be moving forward. That it's not just about go and do the major, get the job, and you're done. That is one piece, of going to college, but it is an experience that is meant to shape you as a person, and you should find a school that's going to help you as a person do that to the best of its ability.
So this last question is related to admission decisions. So at Longmeadow High, I would say more than 50% of our students are usually applying under some sort of early, action or early decision. So most of our students are done with the process in November and December. With that said, who should apply early? Is it beneficial to apply early? Who should apply regular? So with those decisions that students have to make, is there particular reasons why they would apply one over the other? And of course, there's a difference between ED and EA, we all know. Anybody?
I was going to say, who's going to fight over those? you're going to hear a lot of like the early decisions. So you're going to hear like ED or early decision 1, early decision 2. So ED1, ED2. Keep in mind, early decision, just so you know, is binding. So if you apply to a school early decision, that means you're signing a contract that basically says that you are going to go to that institution regardless of what financially it looks like and so forth. So it's basically that expectation. Early action is basically you applying at a certain time and then you hear back at a certain time, but you still do not need to let that office know until May. You usually apply by a certain time, but then you hear a little bit later on in the process. And you do see a lot of schools that have like an early decision or early action that may end up having more of a regular decision. So they'll send their decisions out in like March or April. And then rolling admissions, which some institutions have, basically is what I said. They review on a rolling basis. So I think like Stick is a good example. I think Westfield has a rolling afterwards. We have rolling afterwards, where usually within a few weeks of your file being complete, that you'll get your decision, and then you still don't need to let students know until May 1st. For early decision, I mean, I know me personally, I have my own opinions about early decision, but honestly, if you know that's where you want to go, and that's the only college you're looking at, you're like, this is the fit for me, this is where I want to go, money's not an issue, then yeah, go ahead and apply early decision. Early action, I encourage everyone to take in consideration. It's just basically you going through the process a little bit earlier so you can find your decision early on. And in most cases, early action schools can review your application just based on the first 3 years. There are some schools that may say, like, you know what, we're going to defer you to regular admission, or we're going to defer you to our early action 2 deadline because we want to see senior year grades. So some schools may end up doing that. Also, some schools you might apply early decision or early action and they waitlist you. Keep in mind, waitlist is not a bad thing. All right. It's basically saying we're going to hold off making decisions until we see what the rest of the application pool looks like. And some schools will actually send you like a form or something towards that nature that says, do you still want to be left on the wait list? And I mean, if it's a school you're interested in, send that back right away, because that's how most institutions will start taking students off the waiting list based on the level of interest too. But it's not a bad thing. A wait list doesn't mean you're denied. It's just they're taking their time with the decision. So I think Tara Wesleyan has early decisions.
Yeah. So at Wesleyan, we have 2 rounds of early decisions. So, I sort of like to conceive of them as essentially 1 round with 2 deadlines because we don't really approach the level of commitment on the part of the student as any different, whether they apply in November. So we have a November 15th deadline, and those students would be notified in mid-December. So it's about a month turnaround. And then we have a January 1st deadline. That's the same as our regular decision deadline. But those students are finding out in just about a week. So mid-February for early decision 2. And so, there are reasons why students might want to do early decision over regular decision. There are reasons certainly why students might choose early decision 1 versus early decision 2. The senior grades, that's a great reason to maybe think, well, this is my best year. I feel like I'm doing my best. And maybe I'm on that upward trend. Early decision 2 might be a great option because they'll get to see a whole semester of my senior grades. And that might be, to my best advantage in this process. Some students just aren't ready to make a November commitment. That's totally fine. That's really early, to make a commitment. And other students might go early decision to another school. And not get in and decide to go early decision 2. All of those are fine pathways. I usually tell students early decision, at least at Wesleyan, is any student's best chance of admission. We don't take demonstrated interest into account in our process, so early decision is the only way to tell us that we are your first choice school and that you want to be at Wesleyan over any other place. I always get frustrated when I see applications and the student has written this additional information about how much they love Wesleyan and we're their first choice school. And I think, oh, where were you in early decision? So it is a really smart idea, I think, for any student, if you're looking at a school that has early decision, to think critically for yourself. If this is your first choice school, that has to be the first thing that you answer. It has to be your first choice school. Is it a good fit for you and your family? That's both obviously academically and financially. Wesleyan gives about the same percentage of students financial aid in early decision that we do in regular decision. So students can apply to Wesleyan in early decision and get a full financial aid package, but you need to understand, what your financial aid would look like and be comfortable with that commitment of signing that contract. And I think for students who feel comfortable, in those spaces, first choice school, we're comfortable with this commitment, early decision is really smart. It simplifies your process. It gives you your best chance of admission. Having said that, The vast majority of students don't apply in early decision, and the vast majority of our offers of admission are actually given in regular decision. So over 80% of those actual, congratulations letters go out in March to our regular decision students. So I think it's really important to just kind of think, if you don't have a clear first choice, early decision is off the table for you, 100%. Early action might be a great option for you if you don't have a clear first choice. Some other schools, there's also schools who have all of this: early decision, early action, and regular decision. We're sorry, that's really confusing. So I would tell you, again, use your counselors, talk through. You do need to be a little strategic about this process. How do you get for you in all the ways they need to be, and how do you use these different, application plans to be able to do that? But early decision can be a fine choice. Most students do not choose to apply in early decision.
Mike, I know, with the community colleges, it's open admission. I mean, you can apply anytime, all the way up until almost like the day that school starts in that school year. Do you have any programs with deadline dates at the community college?
While we are an open enrollment institution, as you pointed out, we do have some selective admissions programs that are within our School of Health, programs like nursing or dental hygiene. Quite a few of those selective first, and then the other healthcare programs with application deadlines, such as dental hygiene, rad tech, our sonography program, all have March 31st deadlines. Some of the other programs are admitting on a rolling admissions basis, but the review process does begin.
All right, thank you. I just want to point out one additional thing related to early action. I know, Chris, you recommended it doesn't hurt because, you can always be deferred to the regular pool. But I've learned with, many of the larger universities, the large universities, sometimes if you apply early and you were really counting on having your senior year grades counted, and if they're about to make a decision and your senior year grades aren't there, sometimes that can be at a disadvantage. So I think in those cases, I think students really do need to look at, do I need my senior year grades? Emily, I know you've talked about this in the past on past panels, where the senior year, when you're actually doing the GPA calculation, that first quarter is actually equated to a full year when you're doing the calculation. So that can have significant impact for students who really need their senior year grades. So I just wanted to point that out.
Not only can that impact the admission to the university, it can also impact the level of merit scholarship that the student might be eligible for as well. So I think that's a great point to bring up, Donna.
All right, thank you. So thanks everyone for joining me on the panel. I appreciate it. I appreciate it every year when I have you on the panel. Hopefully we had a lot of viewers tonight, and there will be parents and students that continue to watch it because it will be on our YouTube channel. So thanks so much. Everyone have a great night.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.